Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 263, Menexenus 234c. Socrates now knows why Menexenus had gone to the Bouleuterion. It wasn't to learn how to be a politician. He wasn't even concerned with the dead, and we don't even know yet why these people are dead, but he was concerned with who would be speaking at the eulogy for the dead. The council had decided to postpone choosing who would speak, but the choice seems to have been narrowed to two potential speakers, Archinos or Dion. I'm not sure Menexenus would have felt that he had wasted his visit, because he would probably have enjoyed the rhetoric surrounding the arguments made for choosing one speaker or another. What does seem to be the case is that he appears to be enamored of rhetoric, and although it's irrelevant to this dialogue, we may add that this ties in with his interest in eristics in Lysis. While Menexenus seems to be more concerned with who will give the eulogy, Socrates pays more attention to the subject of the eulogy. Kaimen o Menexene poaleche kindonue kalone naitoen polemu apothnesken. Indeed, Menexenus, in many places it happens to be a fine thing to die in war. This is rather an abrupt shift from the question who's going to give the eulogy. If there is any connection, it would be that Socrates is implying that it really matters who gives the eulogy because it's a fine thing to die in war. At least now we know why the people have died. They've died in war, which is problematic if the period we're talking about is around 402 to 400. The democracy in Athens has been restored, and we are before the wars which are coming in the 4th century. The Peloponnesian War ended in 403, and it would be a bit late now to be giving a eulogy for people who died in that war. Menexenus doesn't react, and Socrates now launches into one of the longest sentences I've encountered in a Platonic dialogue. First of all, I'll just read this in Greek just to show how long this is, and then we'll break it down slowly. Kai gar tefes kaleste kai megaloprepus tunchane, kai ean penestis on telutese, kai epainu au etuchen, kai ean faulos hup andron sofonte kai uk eke epainunton, ala ekpolu chronu logus parescuas menon, hoi hutos kalos epainusin, hoste kai ta prosonta kai ta me perihecastu legontes, kalis tapos tois onomasi poikilontes, goi tiu si hemontas psuchas, kai ten polin enko miadzontes, katapantas tropus kai tus tetelutekotas ento polemo kai tus progonus emon hapantas tus emprosten kai autus emas tus etizontas epainuntes, host ego geo Menexene genaios painudia tithemai epainumenos hupauton, kai hecastote exeste ca acroomenos kai kelumenos hegumenos ento parachrema medzon kai genaioteros kai kalion gegonenai. For he acquires a fine and magnificent burial, even if he dies poor. And he's acquired praise, even if he's worthless, by men both expert and praising not off the cuff, but having prepared words, speeches from a long time. Men who praise so finely that by saying both what is pertinent and what is not about each one, and by embroidering most finely with names, they beguile our souls, and by extolling the polis in all ways, and by praising both those who have died in the war and all of our ancestors who have come before, and us ourselves, the ones who are still living, to the extent that I, for my part, Menexenus, am quite nobly disposed, being praised by them, and on each occasion I am in ecstasy, hearing and being beguiled, thinking in that very moment that I am greater and more noble and more fine. There are two verbs in this sentence which I have translated as beguile, but they are two different verbs meaning very much the same thing. To beguile is exactly what Socrates is saying about these eulogies. They are designed to make the audience feel something different from what they are currently feeling. They are made to feel more noble, greater, better, and this is one of the aims of rhetoric. One of the interesting things about this sentence is that it can be read in one of two ways, or actually in both ways. In one way, Socrates appears to be praising rhetoric, praising eulogy. Eulogy is a good thing. On the other hand, we can see a lot of criticism in this sentence. All of this long sentence is supposedly an explanation for his first, shorter sentence, in which he had said that in many places dying in war happens to be a fine thing. Before we go any further, I should explain what fine means here. This is a translation of kalon, and kalon is that which appears to be good. We saw in Hippias Major that the good itself is the fitting, while the fine itself is the apparently fitting. This is why good and fine in Greek thought are coextensive. What is good is fine, what is fine is good, because what is fitting appears to be fitting, and what appears to be fitting is fitting. This is the part where people go wrong. What appears to be fitting is not necessarily fitting. And there are several layers to fittingness, different strata. One of them is the aesthetic layer. In the aesthetic layer, what appears to be fitting is fitting, because all of the parts fit together in a body, for example, or a table, anything which is constructed of parts. If the parts are put together fittingly, the whole is fitting, and it appears through the senses. When something is sensed to be fitting, it usually is a fitting thing. However, people who use only their senses then assume that what they sense to be fitting is fitting in other ways as well. And the main other way is the pragmatic way. If something is pragmatically fitting, it is beneficial. So anyone wishing to appear beneficial to the many, the people who use their senses but don't use their intelligence, All they have to do is to appear to the senses of the many as fitting, and then the many will assume that they are also beneficial. This is why the emphasis in rhetoric is always on what appears. If something looks good, sounds good, it must be good in every way. This is the way the many think. When Socrates claims that it is fine to die in war, it is usually understood to mean that it is a morally good thing to do because you are dying bravely, courageously for your country. But immediately Socrates brings it down to a tawdry, mundane reason. The first point in his long sentence explaining why it's fine to die in war. And the reason is that one gets a fine burial, as if getting a good send-off makes it all worthwhile. Socrates immediately adds a rider which makes the unfittingness palpable. You get a fine and magnificent funeral, even if you are poor. Poverty and magnificence don't normally go together. Then Socrates does it again. You get praise even if you're worthless. This goes against Greek common sense. If you're worthless, you shouldn't be getting praise. On the charitable interpretation, we could say, look, Socrates is saying why it's such a good thing to die for one's country, because even if you're poor and even if you're worthless in ordinary life, you attain some sort of noble status in your death. People will then respect you. As for the eulogizers themselves, these are experts who don't praise off the cuff, but have prepared for many years to give this speech. It isn't the case that they have prepared many speeches for these occasions, but that they themselves are prepared by having given speeches or practiced speeches for many years. They know what needs to be said in such circumstances. And what do they say? Things which are pertinent to each one, and also things which are not pertinent to each one. And they embroider most finely and with names. Embroidery, decoration, finery, all of this emphasizes that the speech is about apparent fittingness rather than actual fittingness. This is about appearance, not reality.